Hey folks, my name's Sheridan, and I have opinions on this new 070 Shake album, Petrichor. Danielle Balbuena, or 070 Shake, is a 27-year-old multi-genre artist from North Bergen, New Jersey that initially emerged on the scene in 2016 after releasing a series of 6 singles that caught some traction and ultimately ended up catching the ear of Kanye West, who ended up signing her to his Good Music label shortly thereafter. After releasing a fairly underwhelming EP titled Glitter in 2018, which really only had one amazing song on it, she was featured on Kanye's 7-song self-titled Yay. She contributed a hook on the 6-song Ghost Town that was by far the most significantly memorable moment on the project. Not only does it shine well above the mediocrity that makes up the rest of that project, but there's also a very real argument that it's the best song in Kanye's entire discography. After gaining widespread recognition from fans and critics alike, hopes and expectations for her future works were set unrealistically high, leading up to her 2020 debut, Modus Vivendi. While I haven't revisited that record in a while, I can still confidently say it was one of my favorites of that year, and honestly solidified my fandom for 070 Shake. I still don't quite understand why it wasn't received much better than it was, which isn't to say it was received poorly, but definitely got categorized as underwhelming for a lot of nerds who expected her to immediately be the female Kanye that can also sing. Moving forward, though, she kept fans held over with some singles here and there until finally releasing her sophomore effort, You Can't Kill Me, which to this day I find to be severely underwhelming. I feel like she somehow sacrificed both her appeal as a pop artist and as a conventional rapper on that one to lean into some muddier and more psychedelic electro trap to great success on some cuts and horrendous failure on others. Thankfully, she followed it up shortly after with a Ray collaboration in the same year called Escapism, which completely erupted on TikTok and flung Danielle into a whole other level of fame. Since then, she's been relatively quiet, releasing just a couple of singles, including the absolute heater that is Natural Habitat featuring the other underrated artist, Ken Carson. With only one single that actually made it onto the project though, fans had no idea what to expect going into the release of this third record, Petrichor, which is described as the earthy scent produced when rain hits dry soil. The first song, Sin, starts off with a slow and rather dark tone both sonically and lyrically. Danielle sings about a fractured relationship with a partner she's falling out of love with due to an oversensitivity that she describes, as well as a suspicion of dishonesty. Halfway through, she admittedly enters a dream state where she seemingly begins to urge a reconciliation, but is afraid it already may be too late. As the song progresses, she grows more optimistic about realigning, but does so in spite of a looming sense of being at risk of being consumed or altered negatively by the obsession required to repair this companionship. The dramatic piano backing is very suitable both topically and sonically, and I love the gradual implementation of elements like the vocal sample and rocking electric guitar. The little breakdown towards the end leading to the eerie welcome to the show is a perfect transition and makes for a perfect intro. The second song, Elephant, has a bit more intensity to it. This reverb-soaked, electric guitar-led, moody and melodic trap pop banger features some super cinematic feeling production that accompanies Danielle's trancy vocals to perfection. Topically, she sings about having changed to an unrecognizable extent and being inevitably misunderstood, but also making mistakes in the process that she'd like to discuss with this alluded to companion that I suspect is the same as the last track. This one feels like an appropriately gradual elevation and energy from the first track and keeps a listener like me equally excited to hear the next track as I am to hear this one again. Track 3, Pieces of You, is a beautiful ballad that begins with a fun loop of men chanting a work-like pattern that is later replaced rhythmically with some pretty full claps. Danielle starts off with a verse singing about falling hopelessly in love to the point of obsession. She describes the subject of her love as her own reflection on the delicately sung chorus where she asks, "How could I break you? What would I do with all the pieces of you?" Danielle provides one of her most emotionally potent lyrical showings on this track, but I will say that I can't help but wonder if a more urgent delivery on the verses wouldn't have added to the sincerity of the emotion on this one. The fourth cut, Vagabond, is easily the most optimistic so far. It starts off a bit mysterious and even features, I believe, an accordion to back up a verse that alludes to the idea of coming home. There's a major beat switch for the hook which is very gleeful sounding with some delicate chimes, a sentimental acoustic guitar riff, and a really chill distorted electric one. Danielle sings about a sense of relief and gratefulness she feels, finally being connected and in love with someone to the point of feeling taken in. This is a super pretty one that I think masterfully blends two different styles on the hook and verses. I've honestly never heard anything quite like it. While the fifth song, Lungs, isn't one I'm overly drawn to sonically, I think it holds some narrative value in its just over 60-second runtime. It's a jarringly manic shift in mood to the last song as Danielle describes intense paranoia that she weaves into her obsession with her newfound love. While I am intrigued by the plot-driven nature of this one, it sounds too much like a half-baked Kanye leftover to hold any other value. The sixth track, Into Your Garden, featuring JT of the female rap duo City Girls, offers immediate remedy. It begins with a beautiful and soothing piano solo that precedes any of Danielle's vocals by over a minute. Even when she does present her vocals, she initially does so without words and just sings woefully into her verse. Once she does get to the lyrics, she metaphorically sings about burning her significant other's garden, only to plant her own seeds there. She even describes the inevitability of their connection, saying she believes they're like waves that are meant to crash, only to be pulled back from shore. JT's verse is a little more literal and aggressive, but carries the same sentiment of desiring a commitment that's almost to the point of possession. I love the contrast and the poetic approach of Danielle's lyrics compared to the straightforwardness of JT's. As unconventional and out of pocket as this collaboration is for JT especially, both artists execute their roles to perfection and make for a really unique cut on this project. Now at the halfway point, Song 7 Battlefield feels a bit like a Donda cut on the production end, featuring organs and a super bright guitar riff. Danielle provides a super melodic performance from start to finish, despite forgoing the hook on this cute little under 2-minute bop. Maintaining the loose Bonnie and Clyde theme lyrically while putting her own spin on the us versus the world concept, she's able to add to the pictures she's painting both calmly and at times unpredictably. Track 8, Winter Baby / New Jersey Blues, is one of the most confusing and frustrating single choices of my entire lifetime. I mean, who the hell even let this dud make the track list? The production on the second half does its best to save this thing, but it's a movable object versus an unstoppable force of mid. The Winter Baby half is at best a fun little Sunday morning hangover creation that should have never made it past her hard drive. The New Jersey Blues half is a little bit more engaging and dynamic, but not nearly enough to make up for the weak melodies all around and general irrelevance of the lyrical content. Really just a super disappointing and peculiar choice to put this on an otherwise awesome record so far. With a 9th track, Danielle attempts an interpolation / cover of Tim Buckley's 1970 hit, Song to the Siren. While this would perhaps feel out of left field for many artists in her lane, Danielle has experience with this type of transformative interpolation with the song The Pines, of her debut Modus Vivendi, which is an extremely reimagined version of Leadbelly's Black Girl. It's more commonly known and was popularized by Nirvana, covering and rewording it to Where Did You Sleep Last Night for their iconic 1994 MTV Unplugged performance. Interestingly enough, she actually tapped late Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain's controversial ex, Courtney Love, for this new cover, to fairly mixed results. Danielle kicks it off with the first verse, which is almost an exact word-for-word match to the original, but lets Courtney take over for both the hook and second verse, which really turns me off from the whole thing. I've never subscribed to the frankly ridiculous theories that she killed Kurt, and honestly have not spent nearly enough time looking into her to know what I think of her as a human. What I do know is her voice totally fucking blows, and I would be better off never hearing her moany runs again. Her solo music is trash, that whole album that everyone hypes up is total dumpster juice, and she butchered the cover of a song 100 times better than anything she's ever created. My advice? Just stick to the Tim Buckley version. Thankfully, track 10, What's Wrong With Me, ups the energy significantly after a few snoozers. Despite her vocal dejection both in delivery and lyrically, the production is entrancing and enamoring. It slowly builds and layers on itself as the percussion complicates. Topically, this one presents itself as a bit of a relapse back to old toxic ways for Danielle. She does make clear a disappointment in herself, but also displays a lack of total accountability when essentially tossing her absence up to uncontrollable factors. She acts as if something has come over her or is wrong with her, and while there may be some truth to that, she's made clear earlier in the track list that she's fully aware of these shortcomings and seemingly refuses to address them. She instead continues to rely on the significant other for balance and escape from herself, despite expressing a desire to escape that grasp at times as well. I really love how internally conflicting this one is, even though Danielle doesn't fully grasp her own culpability and agency in this case. The 11th song, Blood on Your Hands, finally stomps out any curiosity that still exists about who Danielle could be writing these songs about, whether from real-life experiences or fictionalized, dramatized versions. While most fans probably guessed or assumed this, not everyone, including myself, was aware she began dating actress and double Nepo baby Lily Rose Depp, who is most well-known individually for starring in Sam Levinson and The Weeknd's dumpster fire HBO original series, The Idol. She's more optimistically starring in Robert Eggers' Nosferatu remake, which I do expect to extend his zero-miss streak. This song is most directly about Lily, kicking off with a declaration from Danielle that she's found her soulmate. She describes a mutual fulfilling love that is so consuming to the point of near pain. She even says that she'd be willing to die for this love at one point. What really hammers in the idea of this song and quite possibly the whole record in general being about or dedicated to Lily is the spoken outro that Lily herself delivers. It's actually a quite haunting and captivating monologue about her devotion to Danielle, someone she says has hurt her in the past. She says Danielle has finally met her match, admitting to her own masochism and complicity and being metaphorically devoured by all that Danielle is. While this one is pretty sonically engaging, the true appeal for me is how conceptually complementary it is to the themes explored throughout the record. Honestly, this one is among Danielle's best work. Approaching the end of the record, track 12, Never Let Us Fade, featuring country singer and now frequent Beyoncé collaborator Cam, begins with some soothing violin that builds up into an atmospheric lead-in to the delicately delivered refrain from Cam. Afterwards, the duo convenes for a harmonized hook about never wanting to give up the euphoric feeling of falling and being in love. Despite a near 4-minute runtime though, I'm never really fully captivated by the vocal performances on this one, and I'm not really sold that it adds anything narratively that hasn't already been covered or is in the next song. It's definitely not bad or the worst on the track list, but I do think the album would benefit from shaving a few songs off, and this is one of them. The final cut on this one, Love, at the very least actually feels like an outro, which for some reason these days is rare. It both sonically symbolizes an ending, but also reaches a topical conclusion. For a record that finds the artist struggling so much to find purpose in a real, fully requited love, and honestly hits some major hiccups and regressive moments morally, Dani finally reaches the conclusion that the love she's found is more than enough. Forget the paranoia, fear of commitment, and prospect of betrayal, because she's found her person, and that person is more than enough to fulfill her. The cinematic pads and electric guitar accompany this one sufficiently, but I can't help but mention that I think the production on the final 2 tracks is a bit barren compared to the rest of the record. Definitely not bad work, but I definitely think the instrumentation could sound fuller. Ultimately, I think this record is being wildly underappreciated in music discussion spaces for one reason or another, as it's one of the most creative and original pop or R&B records to release in the past few years. Dani has essentially created her own genre, which I choose to call psychedelic synth R&B. I think she really hones in on it for this project, which I think separates her from her influences more than she has ever before. I guess I can understand to an extent why some are still disappointed with this record, as I do believe Danielle has the potential to create a flawless one, and this is still not quite there. I'm just happy she's putting out mostly great music and showing signs of improvement. While I do think her previous effort may have been a step back, to me, Petrichor is a few massive steps forward, which is why I have to give it at least an 8.13 out of 10. All right, that'll wrap her up, folks. Thanks for watching. As you can probably tell, I'm still very sick, so if you want to heal me and make me better, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. I could go if you don't, so please help me out. Goodbye.